Blizzard has shut down more big private servers in the last year than in any year I can remember, and this time they did it with actual lawsuits, not just scary letters in the night. Turtle WoW, 8 years of work gone. Stormforge the same week, and now Ascension, the biggest one still standing beside Warmane, dragged into federal court. So every time another one falls, the same question turns up in my comments, worded a dozen different ways but always the same underneath. Are private servers just done? Is this the end of the scene? And I want to try to answer that properly, not just doom about it. So if you land somewhere different than I do by the end, tell me in the comments. That's half the reason I make these. And if this is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribing is the easiest way to not miss the next one. Because this is genuinely a question about the future, and your guess is about as good as mine. The short version of where I come down, and then I'll show my work. The scene isn't dying, but the kind of private server most players actually loved might be. And what grows back in its place is something a lot less trustworthy. Let me walk both sides of that because both are real. Start with the bad news because it's genuinely bad and I'm not going to soften it. What changed this year isn't that Blizzard got angry, it's that Blizzard all of a sudden had a real reason to pursue these servers and developed a method to do so. The Turtle case is the template. They sued, a federal court ruled in their favor, and the injunction that came out of it is brutally broad. The original team can't run the server, can't keep updating the code, can't hand the client out, and they can't pass the project to somebody else to continue. So the people who spent 8 years building Turtle are legally done. That part is real, and it's the part Blizzard actually won. But here's the first crack in how much that victory is worth, and it's worth sitting on for a second. The injunction binds the team. It can't bind everybody else. Turtle's client was on hundreds of thousands of machines the day it died, and almost immediately, servers started opening up in its place running a version of that same client, or at least an older leaked one. I'm not going to pretend I know exactly who's behind them or how they're connected to anyone, because honestly, nobody outside it probably really does. But the simple fact is that Blizzard killed Turtle, and within weeks, there were multiple servers carrying its content forward anyway. Blizzard got the team. They did not get the work walked out the door inside the game files of everyone who ever downloaded it, and there's no injunction broad enough to claw that back. And the reason that matters for everyone else is that the legal method still worked and it was clean and Blizzard can run it again. They've basically got a repeatable process now. Find a server big enough to matter, point at the donations and call it profit from infringement, and push for an injunction wide enough to end the operators. Stormforge saw that coming and just folded rather than fight. Ascension is in the middle of it as we speak. So if you're somebody thinking about starting the next big community server, you're now doing that with a very clear picture of how this ends if you get popular. And the hosting companies have watched it too. When the takedown pressure comes, a normal Western host isn't going to die on a hill for your WoW server. They'll pull the plug and keep their business. So the operators think twice, the hosts think twice, and the whole thing gets a lot more dangerous to even attempt. That's a real chilling effect, and anyone telling you it isn't is kidding themselves. Now the other side, and this is the side I think actually wins on the history. The scene has been dying, supposedly, for 20 years. Blizzard has been swatting these servers since 2005, and there are more of them now than there were then. As a kill rate, that's not exactly going great for them. The Turtle content surviving its own shutdown is just the small version of a much bigger truth, which is the emulation foundation underneath all of this. Every one of these servers is built on an open source core that's been passed hand to hand and improved for 2 decades, and it sits on thousands of machines all over the world right now. You can shut down an operator. The thing they were running was never theirs to begin with. It was a shared piece of work that belongs to nobody and everybody, and that's not something a court order knows how to delete. And look at which servers are actually still standing, because it tells you everything. The survivors aren't all the same, but they have one thing in common. They've each found a way to not be worth suing, and there are basically 2 ways to pull that off. The first is to stay small and humble and non-profit, no flashy marketing, monetization that's either non-existent or so careful there's nothing for a complaint to grab onto. Chromicraft is the obvious example. Non-profit, open source, runs on donations, never picked a fight, still quietly humming along. The second way is the complete opposite, and somebody's already typing it in the comments. So let me get there first. Warmane. Huge, loud, been running for well over a decade, and paid to win in a way nobody even tries to hide. The cash shop is right there with a price tag on a raid-ready character. By my own logic, that server should have been a target years ago. So why is it still up? Because it's the other survival strategy. It's so big, so established, and so far outside easy legal reach that going after it is a harder, messier fight than going after a turtle. The small servers survive by being beneath notice. The giants survive by being too entrenched and too far away to be worth the trouble. Both live. What dies is everything caught in between, big enough to be worth suing, but reachable enough to actually lose. That was Turtle exactly. But then again, a year ago everyone said that Turtle was untouchable. It clearly wasn't. After Turtle, Ascension was supposed to be untouchable, which by the looks of it may not be true. We will soon find out about that. Regarding Warmane, I may very well have to eat up my own words for calling them untouchable. And notice what that second category already tells you, because we're going to come back to it. The model that survives heavy monetization isn't the honest community project, it's the giant operating in the gray zone, hard to reach, not especially transparent. Hold that thought. And for every project that goes down, new ones come up, sometimes rebuilt from scratch on completely independent code outside the reach of whatever just got killed. I'm not going to name the small new ones because frankly the last thing a fresh low-profile server needs is some YouTuber pointing a spotlight at it. But they're there, they keep appearing, and that pattern has never once stopped. So is the player base actually shrinking? Honestly, nobody knows, and anybody who throws a confident number at you is guessing. There's no clean public stat for total private server population, the projects don't report it, and the ones that do are marketing themselves. What we can say is that the demand itself is the most stable thing in this whole story. It never really goes away. But I want to be careful with the usual line that players just scatter to the next server because it's too tidy. If you've sunk years into a server and it gets killed, you don't always log into a new one the next morning. A lot of people just stop for a while. They might take a break because they are burned out, or they go play something else, and that something else is almost never an official Blizzard server. That's the part I keep noticing in my own comments. The people who leave a dead server and don't come straight back aren't drifting back to official WoW, they're going to other games entirely. Sometimes for a few months, sometimes for good. So the demand doesn't vanish, but it doesn't all neatly pour into the next private server either. And it definitely doesn't flow back to Blizzard. And that raises a question I genuinely can't answer, which is whether Blizzard even knows that. Do they assume every player they displace eventually wanders back to a sub? Or do they understand that a chunk of these people leave the franchise altogether? I don't think anyone outside Blizzard can say what they actually know about this audience, and I'm not sure Blizzard knows either. Which is almost the saddest part of all of this. Imagine if instead of only ever closing servers, they once tried to actually reach these people. Something as simple as, we know we've let some of you down, and we're trying to do better. They've never said anything like that. The only message this community ever gets from Blizzard arrives in the form of a lawsuit. So even with all that, the code can't be killed and the core demand doesn't disappear, which means private servers aren't going extinct. But and this is the part I can't get out of my head, what they're turning into is worse for normal people. Think about what Blizzard's whole method actually depends on. It needs operators it can find, in countries where it can sue them. It needs hosting companies that will fold under legal pressure. And it needs money it can follow, like donations running through PayPal that look an awful lot like revenue once a lawyer gets hold of them. Take away those three things and the template stops working. And there's already an entire industry built around taking away exactly those three things. There's a whole world of hosting in countries that simply do not honor American copyright takedowns. Places where the legal request just goes in a drawer. They let you sign up anonymously, no real name attached, and they take payment in crypto, so there's no trail back to a person. I'm not going to walk anybody through how to use any of that. That's not the point of this video. The point is just that it exists, it's mature, and it's sitting right there. So when the pressure pushes hard enough on the servers that play it straight, the obvious place for the scene to go is offshore, anonymous, and crypto-funded. We're already seeing the edges of it. The Ascension complaint itself talks about servers hosted in Russia on so-called bulletproof providers. and a money structure nobody can quite untangle. Which sounds like a spy thriller and is, except the treasure at the center of it, is a 20-year-old video game about killing boars in Elwyn Forest. Here's the dark irony though, and it's the thing this whole video is really about. The turtle model with a public team, transparent donations, 8 years of openly building something they were proud of. That's the model the law just killed. And the model it leaves standing is the anonymous offshore crypto who even runs this kind of a server. Remember Warmane, the big grey zone giant that's outlasted everybody. Warmane is the preview of where all of this goes. The servers built to be hard to reach and hard to pin down are the ones that survive heavy monetization, and the legal pressure just makes that lesson louder for everyone watching. But the pressure doesn't clean up the scene. It does the opposite, it kills the trustworthy version and selects for the shady version, because being trustworthy now means being reachable, and being reachable means being a target. The good actors are the ones with names and addresses and a PayPal, which is exactly what gets you sued. The bad actors are anonymous behind a Russian IP, which is exactly what doesn't. We might be watching Blizzard accidentally breed a scene that's harder to trust than the one they're trying to clean up. And all of this is happening with a clock ticking in the background because BlizzCon is September 12th, and everybody expects Blizzard to finally reveal official Classic Plus, the Camelot thing, which scrambles everything depending on how it goes. The optimistic version is that Blizzard finally gives people the Classic Plus they were going to private servers to get in the first place, and a huge chunk of the audience just comes home. The scene shrinks not because anybody killed it, but because the itch finally got scratched in the official game. That's basically the nostalgia story repeating. They shut down the biggest vanilla server in 2016 and then handed everyone official Classic, and a lot of people went happily. But I don't fully buy that it's that clean this time. Official Classic Plus is going to be monetized. We've already seen the energy, the premium currency, the $75 treehouse, the edition tiers. And more importantly, it is never going to allow the genuinely wild stuff the private scene does. It won't give you a classless system where you build your own hero out of any spell in the game. It won't give you brand new player races or a server where everyone stays level 1 forever and raids anyway. Official anything has to be safe and on brand. So the people who wanted vanilla but cozier, sure, Blizzard probably wins them back. But the people who wanted vanilla but completely reimagined, the experimenters, they're not getting served by Classic Plus, and they're exactly the crowd that'll follow the scene wherever it goes next, including offshore. Though Classic Plus doesn't really save the scene or kill it, it splits it. The nostalgia crowd goes official, the experimenter crowd goes underground, and that comfortable middle, the public, trustworthy, ambitious community server like Turtle, the thing that served both crowds at once, that's the part with nowhere left to stand. So back to the question, are private servers cooked? No. They're not dying, the code is immortal, and the demand never really goes away. And 20 years of Blizzard trying hasn't changed either of those things. But a year from now, the scene looks different than it does today. Smaller in the places you can actually see, because the big public servers are the ones that get killed, and the survivors learn to stay quiet. Because staying alive now means staying invisible. And it splits down the middle, the safe nostalgic players absorbed into official Classic Plus, the die-hard experimenters push towards servers that are anonymous, offshore, and a lot harder to trust. And it turns out I'm not the only one who feels that way, which honestly surprised me a little. I threw this exact question out to you before making the video, where the scene lands a year from now, and out of a few hundred answers the most common one, by a clear margin, was smaller and quieter, but still alive. That's almost word for word where I ended up to. Only about 1 in 7 thought Classic Plus gutted the whole thing, and only about 1 in 5 thought it gets pushed mostly offshore and shady. So the general read from the people who actually live in this scene isn't that it dies, it's that it shrinks and goes quiet and keeps breathing, which lines up with everything we just walked through, and it's a strangely comforting answer wrapped around a slightly sad one. And the thing I keep landing on is that the part we are losing is the best part. Not the servers themselves, those come and go, but the open, proud, public version of the scene. The kind of project that puts its team's name on 8 years of work and invites you to watch them build it. That's the exact thing the law is most efficient at killing. And that's the thing I'll actually miss. So I'd really like to know where you land on this because I've made my peace with my own answer and I'm still not sure I like it. I don't think Classic Plus makes the scene vanish. I think it just quietly thins it out, takes a small portion of the easy half and leaves the rest to scatter somewhere darker and harder to find. If you made it this far, odds are we think about this stuff the same way. So consider subscribing and sticking around for whatever comes next. Whether you agree, disagree, or have some other input on all of this, I'm really looking forward to reading your comment. That's the best part about doing all of this, reading through your input and feedback. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I see you in the next one. Until then, take care.